course. It's escalating every single day. And, I think that an important part of the conversation here is, obviously what Belarus is doing in terms of, weaponizing migrants in this way is a terrible, terrible thing. But I don't know if the right response from Poland in terms of sending back migrants who have already crossed to the other side of the border. And that's because we know what this dictatorship is like. We know who Lukashenko is. And someone at some point has to step up, because who are the people that are going to be falling through the cracks here? It's these migrants who are dying of hypothermia every day and just other terrible, terrible things. And I just don't see the party here that's going to step up be from the Belarusian side. So I think we need to be engaged in, addressing how each country is responding to this.
How each country is responding to it. And right now we're seeing incredible amounts of EU solidarity behind Poland. And just, if you flash back 3 weeks, the last EU summit, the Commission President Ursula von der Leyen at the time said there was no way Brussels would finance border fencing. Poland, a country that refuses common border policy, defies rule of law, she says. On Wednesday, here was the European Council President, Charles Michel, in Warsaw to show solidarity with Poland. And yes, border-boosting finance is back on the cards.
About the physical infrastructure in order to protect the borders. Based on an opinion of the legal service of the Council, it's legally possible, based on the current legal framework at the European level, to finance infrastructure.
Dave Clark, your reaction?
Well, it's good that the European Union is standing up now. They've only got themselves to blame if this is the crisis they found themselves in. We know who Lukashenko is, we know who Vladimir Putin is, and yet somehow we've just deepened our reliance on natural gas coming from Russia, some of it via Belarus, and we've failed for a decade now to develop some kind of common border policy that could absorb what is only 2,000 Iraqi Kurds or so in the forests of eastern Poland. They could all be absorbed tomorrow fairly simply, but the European Union has for years just shot itself in the foot on border policy, and our enemies, and let's be clear about this, Putin and Lukashenko are opponents of the European Union, of NATO, of the transatlantic alliance, and of solidarity in the rest of Europe. Our enemies have spotted our weak points, which we've only deepened over the years. Our inability to deal with migrants and to set up a humane and shared system of dealing with them, and our increasing reliance on natural gas supplies from Russia, which are clearly going to be used as a political tool against us.
Dominika Kozic, is Poland partly to blame as well, since Poland refused that common border policy as way back as 2015. If there was a way to share the burden today, we wouldn't have this crisis.
It's not so black and white, I'm afraid. And a part of this humanitarian crisis, we have more political crisis. And it is not a question only of borders, but it is also a question of competences and the force of the powers. And Belarus will use and Russia will use all possible chances to destabilize this situation. And I'm not sure if it would be one common border policy for all EU, we could avoid this situation. I'm not so sure, because for Russia it will be always impossible to forget that Poland, Lithuania, Estonia, Latvia, but also Hungary, it was part of the Soviet Empire. And our membership in NATO and EU will be always a problem for Russia.
3 weeks ago, Poland was a pariah. We talked about it the whole EU summit, and now it's all behind Poland.
If we listen closely, it's back to the USSR. So we need to reinforce the European policies regarding migrants. As Dave Clark said, we should be working on what we have to do in order to enforce our values effectively. And the problem is, if you look at the Brexit situation and the fight between Paris and London, we see that Paris doesn't have any weapon to use against the British in order to force them into complying with the laws that would allow or people to go fishing in their seas. We don't have the means to exert any pressure on the British. And the Russians know that we are weak. We don't have any means to fight back against Belarus or other Russians. So they're trying to see if they can circumvent the EU in order to be maybe not an ally, but a complying parent. And that's something that we should fight against.
Yes, if I may interrupt, it was very smart comment of Minister of Foreign Affairs of Lithuania, Gabrielius Landsbergis, who told that Russia and Belarus, they work together. They want to provoke EU, and they want to show that EU is either not humanitarian because it's pushing back migrants, either is weak. There are two goals for the Russia as well.
We are not faithful to our values. We can't enforce them, and we are weak. And so if we don't have any values, and if we don't know how to fight back, what are we?